Welcome back to this week's pod. There is no better time to look over the 2023 season calendar than right now. First of all, I am disappointed with the calendar, or lack of. With only 12 rounds, it's a bit disappointing, considering the big name tracks and locations that aren't in the series for 2023. But we'll get into that later on. The season opener is the Newcastle 500. Now, this has always produced good races, obviously coming to mind as the iconic, well-known move from Scott McLaughlin on Mark Winterbottom, but also the title decider, where Scott made the move on Craig Lowndes, which ended up costing him the championship. Now, no doubt it will create some great on-track battles and produce back-to-back memorable races. Just a matter of weeks after the Melbourne Grand Prix, such a big stage, as long as the drivers stay out of the barrier material that ended up taking forever to repair last year, should be a good watch. Last year, from memory, we had a couple of dramatic endings with Chaz winning one and then Shane wrapping up the second, but the Gen 3 cars around those long, fast corners should be interesting to watch. With such little downforce, those flat, sweeping corners will be areas where drivers will have to just brake to make the corner. Late April hosts the Perth Super Sprint. It goes a bit unnoticed for better or worse. Last year, we saw the move with Cam Waters running wide and holding the position on Will Davison. Obviously, it was the only race in Western Australia, so it's difficult to call it an Australian series without touring all of it. But tracks like Winton or, obviously the desire to go back to New Zealand, it should be realistically more prioritised than Perth. The track, I'm not sure, will excel with the new cars. A decent chunk of the track is single file, particularly the uphill collection of sweeping corners. Then, on the 19th of May, the only event in May is the Tasmania Super Sprint. These races tend to be pretty good, with that turn 4 hairpin and the long sweeping corner being a battle of side drafting. Last year had that hold your breath moment with Tim Slade airborne sideways crossing the track after being ran extremely wide by Cam Waters. It will be interesting to see the Gen 3 cars around the track. Thinking about the new cars and their philosophy changes, Symmons Plains Raceway and that long right-hander is just screaming for action and drama. Darwin, over a month later, not a lot to say about this track. Definitely had great moments before. Tends to be opening lap moves and then just a battle into turn 1 for any chance to make a move. But who knows, maybe these car changes will help improve the races. Townsville, early July. Every year of late seems to have some incident around SVG. Last year being that dive bomb from miles away from Anton, and in 2021, Shane battling Whincup for the win. Townsville, in my opinion, is one of the better street tracks. Should be interesting to see how they take turn 1. Typically, it isn't even recognised as a corner because it's just flat, but this year will definitely be a lift at least. July 28th to the 30th at Eastern Creek or Sydney Motorsport Park. I may be biased on being happy to see it on the calendar as it's right around the corner, but another track that doesn't really deserve to be on the calendar. Unless it's a move on the opening lap, not a lot seems to go on. Then obviously the Bend, mid-August, it does produce a good race. Just pretty much continual right-hander corners. Last year Feeney had a good run, particularly in the wet, but it was ultimately a SVG domination. You had that monster crash at the start where Randall had the mysterious stall, or whatever it turned out to be. But with that long tyre killer of the collection of right-handers with complete load on the front left, should make this such a good race with the new regs. Sandown, mid-September. This is probably one of my favourite tracks on the calendar, and arguably across the world. Just non-stop good racing. Couldn't pick a best moment. Super 2 last year had that monster build-up where a couple cars ran off on turn 3 and just spread the mud that covered the track. Ended up having cars on top of each other. There was a double overtake with Shane and the broken collarbone. No doubt the downhill chicanes will become much more entertaining with the new cars. October 5th to the 8th, the iconic Bathurst 1000. Hopefully this year isn't horribly wet. Just being there at the beginning of the weekend, you could actually see grass in the grandstands and general admission. By the end of it, it was just complete mud. That unfortunate cancellation of the top 10 probably robbed us of something brilliant. This year, with the SVG and Ritchie combo, it's hard to see anyone else winning both at Bathurst and Sandown. I see a few moves being made into the chase. That right-hander into the chase will become a corner in itself. So if drivers and teams get it right, that will be a prime area to overtake. Late October, host of the Gold Coast round. Maybe more controversy around those tyre bundles. I believe that one of the highest attendance rates in the whole of the calendar, and also had pretty great battles. David Reynolds picking up a podium in the first race and getting a P4 in the next. That number 26 seemed to do really well there. New regs, maybe could see him put up more to Shane than his clean sweep of a weekend, but who knows. Adelaide, the Adelaide track back for a second year in a row after the absent COVID period. Now, this project provided amazing races last year, whether that was down to SVG doing everything to stop himself from winning, but Brock had his first win, the WAU 1-2, not a dull moment, another great street track. Turn 8 will provide endless entertainment with drivers already understeering into that wall. The new regs should only emphasize that. But yeah, I mean, with the new regs, the 2023 season should be action-packed, with pretty much a third of the aero performance, that clean slate, the likes of SVG and the force of nature of 888, should hopefully be pegged back, and hopefully the rest of the field will be able to challenge Shane to the title. But yeah, Di Pasquale really needs to step up and be that team leader at DJR. And Tickford need to provide Cam a car he can challenge Shane with. And, I mean, you also have Chaz in the Ford. It really should be anyone's game. Now, for this week's news, Jake Kostecki out, Declan Fraser in. While, honestly, I don't really like the change. It ultimately came down to who had the deeper pocket. 888 announcing Richie Senaway as an enduro driver to partner with Shane. That will be a force to reckon with. I honestly don't see any event where they won't win. Unless something wild happens, even if the car is underdeveloped, with those two at the wheel, not a lot can stop them. The likes of Chaz Mostert and likely partner of Lee Holdsworth may give them a run for their money. But, besides that, do we really see anyone else? Not really. The Grove Racing team performed very well in the 24 hours of Dubai with a solid result of P4 with Stephen Grove, Brenton Grove, Anton Di Pasquale and El Bamber at the wheel. But I think last year they finished 6th, so decent improvement. The Chinese Grand Prix has been officially ruled out with no replacement, and the 2023 Formula 1 season is now running at 23 different venues. That is it for this week's pod. Thank you for tuning in.